Thank you very much, Senators. Thank you for holding this hearing and for your attention to this important matter. Good morning, Chairman Casey, Ranking Member Risch, and other members. Thank you. Essentially, today we're commemorating the 2-year anniversary of the Syria uprising. It coincides with another dark milestone. Over 1 million refugees have fled Syria. More troubling, half of that number arrived in the last 2 months. I would like to share with you the approach the Bureau for Population, Refugees, and Migration is taking to address the crisis and how that complements and reinforces what the U.S. Agency for International Development is doing. I shall briefly comment on how the refugee crisis is affecting the neighboring countries and then the challenges we face in delivering humanitarian assistance to those in need throughout the region. In Jordan, approximately 30% of the 350,000 refugees live in Zatri refugee camp in northern Jordan. The rest, the majority, have been taken in or helped by relatives, friends, or even strangers. We are grateful that Jordan continues to allow Syrian refugees to cross its borders. We've asked them to ensure Palestinian and Iraqi refugees can also cross, and we recognize that its resources are stretched. We are in close, regular contact with the government of Jordan about the crisis. Lebanon is hosting over 357,000 Syrian refugees in addition to over 33,000 Palestinian refugees who have fled Syria. They live in host communities, allowing greater freedom of movement and possibilities for self-sufficiency. The presence of so many refugees in a country of 4 million people, as the chairman said, 10%, the equivalent of 10% of the Lebanese population, taxes Lebanon's infrastructure and resources and has increased tensions within the refugee hosting communities. Hezbollah's presence in southern Lebanon creates a challenge for those providing aid, while its involvement in the government complicates U.S. efforts to provide help. Despite these strains, the government of Lebanon continues to keep its borders open, though its leaders warn that Lebanon has reached its saturation point. Over 110,000 Syrian refugees have fled to Iraq, most to Kurdistan. Domi's camps accommodates approximately 54,000, and 2 camps in Anbar province at Al-Qaim accommodate over 7,500. Others live in villages and communities. For some time, the government of Iraq has kept the Al-Qaim border crossing with Syria closed, except for medical emergencies and letting some of the elderly cross. And more recently, it has closed the Rabia crossing. We've asked them to allow all refugees to cross. Since the beginning of the crisis, the government of Turkey has addressed the humanitarian needs and shouldered most of the costs of the over 186,000 refugees registered in 17 camps set up by the government. There are another 71,000 registered or soon to be registered living outside of camps, and the government of Turkey estimates that an additional 100,000 refugees live in the area, in the cities of Turkey. We recognize the huge strain that the influx of refugees is currently placing on host countries. It is essential that neighboring countries continue to keep their borders open for those refugees fleeing violence in Syria. In every meeting with officials from these countries, we thank them for allowing refugees to cross and discuss ways to help them uphold humanitarian principles while protecting their own security and preventing a spillover of violence. The Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration works closely with our colleagues at USAID, and together we lead the U.S. government's humanitarian response. Nancy Limborg and I have traveled often to the region. We've traveled together twice. And on our most recent trip, we were also joined by Ambassador Ford in Turkey prior to our participation at the January Kuwait Donors Conference. Our communications teams are taking every opportunity to get the message out about the dimensions of the crisis and to highlight our government's leadership role in responding. The State Department is helping to get as much humanitarian aid as possible to Syria's conflict victims. We are providing funding to the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and non-governmental organizations, which all bring technical expertise and operational capacity to a crisis as large scale as this. Of the nearly $385 million provided thus far, the State Department's contributions total nearly $185 million and meet basic humanitarian needs such as shelter, water, and health, both inside Syria and in host countries. The delivery of assistance is often undertaken at great personal risk. In recent months, United Nations convoys have delivered aid to opposition-held areas in Syria where thousands are in acute need of humanitarian help. Such movements are highly dangerous. I'm glad we're joined today by the High Commissioner, Antonio Guterres, because he was personally involved in getting those first convoys through. He was on the phone constantly to ensure their safety and that they would be able to cross the battle line safely and get to the people in need it was a remarkable example of daring by the High Commissioner of Refugees and his staff. Of course, people in need are not concentrated in one area and can be found all around the shifting battle lines. Humanitarian organizations provide aid in a neutral and impartial manner. The United Nations is seeking to get access to all communities in need on a regular basis. It is unacceptable and a violation of humanitarian principles for the Syrian regime to deny this access. I should also mention that the fighting has also endangered the lives of Palestinians and Iraqi refugees who lived or live today in Syria. They too are caught up in the crisis and have been displaced or fled the country. On a serious matter, the international community is facing a resource crisis. The UN's regional response plan has thus far received only 21% of the funds it needs to operate in the first half of calendar year 2013. Other donors must quickly provide the funds that agencies need to keep life-saving operations going. Even if the Assad regime falls soon, humanitarian aid will likely continue. This is because of the widespread destruction of Syria's infrastructure and predicted flows of refugees that will continue to cross borders, likely in both directions. Needs could extend into the long term. Another issue of interest to this subcommittee, coordination of the international humanitarian response. This is complex and must occur on multiple levels, but it is occurring. The United States participates in Syria humanitarian forum meetings in Geneva that bring together senior officials from key donor governments, countries affected by the crisis, and UN leaders to coordinate our collective response. We are also deepening our coordination with the Syrian Opposition Coalition's Assistance Coordination Unit, as are our UN agencies and other partners. To conclude, I want to tell you that we are doing our utmost to respond to this. It involves talking to other governments about doing more, about following through on their pledges. It involves traveling to the region. It involves talking to Syrian Americans and other Syrian diaspora groups about what can be done, exploring every avenue, trying to get access to very, very hard to reach places. I think the American taxpayer should feel good that we are taking great care with the resources to which we are entrusted to get aid in, and our intention is to save as many lives as possible. So thank you for your attention this morning.